This lesson is going to be about Earth's tides. We're also going to tie in some phases of the moon and some eclipses here, because really all of this stuff is kind of connected together. We're going to talk about all three of them, but really they interact. So the placement of the moon for a solar eclipse is the same placement of the moon for a specific moon phase, and it's the same placement of the moon for a specific tide. So really we're going to be talking about the same setup, but we're going to talk specifically about the different pieces. So first of all, if we talk about moon phases, this ball here represents the moon, the lamp represents the sun, and this ball represents Earth. So I'm not going to be able to move it, but if we were to, I'm going to move this instead to help make the point. So if we're talking about phases of the moon, if we're here and the sun is coming this way and we are standing right here, what phase of the moon do we see? This goes back to 6th grade and 5th grade, talking about phases of the moon. Okay, so we can't see, the sun is on this side of the moon, it's not on this side of the moon. Therefore, it's the new moon where it's completely dark on our side. And then as we go around, as the moon revolves around the Earth, we start to see light on this side. So the crescent gets bigger and bigger, and then we get here and we see half of the moon. And then we come on this side, and remember, the orbit of the moon around the Earth is a different plane. It's on a different level than the Earth's orbit around the sun. And it changes throughout the year and throughout the decade and throughout 100 years. So we can get on this side, and people would normally think, okay, that's going to be an eclipse because the moon's going to be hidden behind the Earth. But actually, because the Earth is in a different spot from the moon, most times when you get on this side, you can see the entire face of the moon lit up. So that would be a full moon. And then as we continue, the crescent gets smaller and smaller, and then we get to the half of the moon over here. That's first quarter. No, that's third quarter, sorry. And then we continue around till we can't see anything on this side. It's dark because the light's over here, and then that's the new moon again. So that's the phases of the moon, okay? But if you are standing right there, let me see if I can get the location right. It's kind of hard to see, but there's a shadow on the Earth right here. So if you're standing inside of that shadow, what's happening right now? Okay? It's a solar eclipse. If you're standing there, the sun is being blocked out by the moon. So the moon is here, the Earth is here, the sun is there, and then if you're standing right there in the shadow, the Earth is being blocked. The sun is being blocked and you can't see it. So what phase of the moon is this? Okay, go back to our thoughts about phases. It's a new moon, and it's a solar eclipse. So solar eclipses can only happen when there's a new moon. You can't see light on this side of the moon. The moon is blocking the light to the Earth here. So we've got a new moon, but we also have a solar eclipse. Okay, so if we're over on this side and the Earth blocks all of the light from the moon, remember, sometimes when we see what is this? Full moon. Sometimes when we see a full moon, the Earth is here, but as it rotates around, sometimes it actually comes in front of the moon. So what is this as far as eclipse? This is a lunar eclipse where the Earth is blocking the light from the moon. But that can only happen in which phase? Phase of the moon. A full moon. So a lunar eclipse can only happen during a full moon, and a solar eclipse can only happen during a new moon. There are actually two questions on the pretest asking the same thing but from different understandings. So we've talked about phases, we've talked about eclipses. Now let's talk about tides, because that's really the focus of this lesson. So as the moon goes around the earth, there's two different things acting on the waters on the planet. You've got the sun's gravity pulling, and I'm going to move this out a little bit to kind of make the point a little better. You got the sun's gravity pulling on the water on the earth. You've got the moon's gravity pulling on the water on the earth. Which one's bigger? The sun, obviously. But then the question is, when it comes to the effect of on the water, which one has the biggest effect? The sun because it's bigger, or the moon? Well, the moon is going to have a bigger effect on Earth's water than the sun is, because you have to remember that thing is 94 million miles away. The moon is only 175,000 miles, give or take a little bit. So this is a whole lot closer. So the effect of the moon's gravity is going to have the biggest effect on tides. Okay, biggest effect because it's closer. Okay, so now as the moon is revolving, and it probably is better if I do it this way, as the moon is going around the earth, we've got a couple of different situations. During the day, during one day, so the moon, the earth's rotation, right? It rotates, and then the moon is here. We're going to have high tides and low tides. There are 2 high tides every day. There are 2 low tides every day. So the earth is spinning and the moon is here. And so if you're on this spot on the moon, right there, here, let me do this. Make this a little easier to see. If you're on that spot on the moon and you rotate towards the moon, it's going to be high tide for you. You rotate away from the moon, it's going to be low tide for you. Rotate towards the sun, it's going to be high tide. Going to be rotate away, it's low tide. So you're going to have 2 tides, 2 high tides, 2 low tides every day. Always have 2, always have 2. Okay? Now, if the earth and the moon are lined up, if the sun and the moon are lined up, it's called a spring high tide. Okay? It could be lined up like this. It could be lined up like this. It doesn't matter as long as they're in one line. That is a spring high tide. It's the highest of all the high tides. Now, of these spring high tides, which one do you think is highest? Probably this one, because you got the sun and the moon pulling in the same direction. Where here, you've got them pulling in opposite directions. But with the moon here or the moon here, as it's coming around, there, that's called a spring high tide. It's the highest of the high tides. When you get to here, where the moon is perpendicular with the earth and the sun, that just means at a 90-degree angle. As it continues around, here is also perpendicular. So here and here are called neap high tides, N-E-A-P, neap high tide. That just means it's the lowest of the high tides. So when the earth, the moon, and the sun are lined up, that's a highest of the high tides. And when they're perpendicular to each other, that's lowest of the high tides. Remember that there are 2 high tides and 2 low tides every day. And then the moon's gravity has the greatest effect because it's closer. I hope that helps. If you need any other help, please come see me on Microsoft Teams. Thanks. Have a great day.